Welcome to I Accidentally Married a Filipina. My name is Rob, but this is not my story. This is John's story, and I will warn you ahead of time. You probably should be sitting down for this one. Here's part 2 of John's story. My neighbor at the time was a pretty cool guy, but he would never tell me who he worked for or what he did for a living. I always just assumed he was in some sort of secret law enforcement. Janet's cousin had been staying over at our house more and more I was ignored by both of them. I was having trouble sleeping, I was having trouble keeping food down, and I was losing what was left of my hair. When I say I'm a nice guy, this is what I mean. I will do anything to make it work, but I'm starting to think that nice guy equals sucker. And I take full responsibility for that. The first thing I did was every day when I left for work. Now remember, I'm a truck route driver, so I'm on the road by 4:30 a.m. every morning. So I would take a clothes hamper full of my belongings to a storage facility until I was down to bare essentials, and Janet and her cousin ignored me so much they never noticed. One morning on my pre-dawn stealth mission, my neighbor is standing on his porch and motions me over and begins to interrogate me. Was I moving out? Was I feeling in danger? I told him I was moving my things out and I did have a bad feeling, but I wasn't leaving. He said he had been watching me leave and come home every day for 2 months because he had the same feeling. He pulled out a sheet of paper that had text messages on it. It was from Janet to her cousin, and to make a long story short, I'm worth more in life insurance to Janet than I was if they'd let me stick around. Not to be too dramatic, but he said if I didn't leave right then and never contact Janet again, he would shoot me himself. This was like I was a part of a CIA movie, but I took him seriously and never contacted Janet or my neighbor again, except for our lawyers to work through the divorce that was actually very simple, all things considered. I called my high school buddy who lived in Tulsa and had a house, and he said he would rent me a room. For a couple of months, all I did was work. I would only go out to visit my kids, and I kept a low profile out of constantly looking over my shoulder. Eventually, I got over that and decided to get on a local dating site because, as you may have figured out, I'm not good at being alone. I was on a roll. I had 27 first dates with no second date. Again, I know I'm not a movie star, just a normal guy, but 27 in a row? Not all 27 were their choice. Some were my choice not to move forward with a second date. I put up honest, unfiltered photos of myself and was honest about what I was looking for in a relationship. Mostly my first dates would show up looking 15 years older than their reported age, or many times they just wanted to go to a nice place to eat on my dime. One gal I took to the Outback Steakhouse showed up looking reasonably close to her photos, hugged me at the door. She dressed well, she smelled good, and she was easy to talk to as we had a drink at the bar as we waited for our table. All was going great. I'm thinking I will have my first second date from this prospect. The waiter came up and she ordered the biggest, most expensive steak on the menu, 2 starter hors d'oeuvres, and a big dessert. Before I even order, she instructs the waiter to box up half the steak, half the baked potato, the 2 starters, and to bring her the other half of the steak and potato when he brought my meal. I was flabbergasted. I looked up at the waiter, stood up, and politely excused myself to the car. And that is why my streak ended at 27 first dates. Back to work and back to not dating for a month or so until, that is, a friend from my truck route said I should go on a date with his cousin. My friend was black and we were pretty close, so I admitted this was a little intimidating as I had never considered dating outside of my race. How would I act? I asked. He said, start by not being an idiot. Do you treat me differently? I pondered that question for a moment and said, well, I guess I don't. He said, then do the same for my cousin. A couple of text messages later, I am out on a date with LaRonda. I was nervous as heck. She was a nice-looking woman, and she dressed smartly. She had a great job and told me she doesn't date white guys, but her cousin talked her into it. This made both of us laugh and led to a really good friendship. We were not a love connection, but it opened my eyes to a before recently untapped potential dating pool. So I rushed in headfirst with this promise. I would no longer date a white woman. I had to try something drastic to find better results, and this was it. I changed my preferences in real life and on the dating site and met a woman named Trina for a first and second date. My confidence was soaring sky high. Trina was my height when she wore heels, and she always wore heels except when she was at her job as a travel nurse. Trina lived in Lubbock, Texas, but commuted every week to Dallas where the travel job was, and then would return to Lubbock every weekend. For this travel job, she was paid $350,000 annually. I had just turned 51, and Trina had just turned 34, so there was a bit of an age gap, but we got along great. Because of my schedule, I could make the 10-hour round trip to Dallas Wednesday and Friday, but the Friday trip included the weekend in Lubbock. I never missed a trip, and Trina and I were dating for about 6 months when I figured out the first red flag. I was always driving her to Dallas or Lubbock for what I thought was convenience, but what turned out to be multiple DUIs. She only would have a couple of glasses on wine on Wednesdays, but the weekends she would get carried away. But hey, isn't that what weekends are for? Plus, to be honest, drinking made her wild in the sack, and I was 100% in for that. Looking back, I am sure the elevated drinking libido blinded me to many things, such as getting once-a-month calls about her being pregnant, and she needed me right there, right now, so no matter the time of day, here comes the white knight, 5 hours away to rescue his damsel in distress, only to find out she was lying because she was drunk and lonely. Or the time she called me from Dallas lockup to come and bail her out on a weeknight because she got picked up for public intoxication. After this one, Trina promised to slow down her drinking because she couldn't lose her job. What about losing me, I selfishly thought. One of the stops at my daily route had a manager who I saw every day and became friendly with. The manager was a Filipina married to an American and had worked her way up to manager. We bonded over me telling the latest crashed and burned story with Trina. Every time I would tell her about my weekend, she would say, "You should date my sister in the Philippines. She is not brown like me. She is color white, so attractive." I would always say that I'm boycotting white women, and she would always say, "How is that working out?" I would laugh and go on to my next step. It is state law that with my level of driving license, I cannot talk on the phone while I am at work, especially when I am at work. When I punch out, I have many, many messages from Trina. She is getting evicted from her house in Lubbock and needs to move on to Dallas over the next 2 days, and could I help her? So on my way there, I arranged for a moving company to meet me there and pay with a credit card to expedite the service. I help her pack as the movers load the heavy stuff and make the first of the 2 trips to Dallas. I help when we arrive in Dallas, and the next trip would be tomorrow morning to load in Lubbock and unload in Dallas, and I would meet her there after I got off work. I made it back to Tulsa just in time to sleep a couple of hours before work. I start my normal routine and I'm heading to work, and I get a sinking feeling that I'm letting Trina down. I know she is a drunk, and I know she is terrible at handling money. I know she's terrible at showing up to work on time. But there was just something about her when she takes that drink that lets it all hang out. I suppose I'm mistaking lust for love, but I put on my white hat and skipped work and headed to Dallas. I'm getting used to the 5-hour trip to Dallas. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes I just think dating should be easier. As I pull up to Trina's house, I see the moving truck backed in, the overhead door is open, but I guess they haven't started yet because there was not any boxes or furniture loaded. Great, I think. I'm just in time to oversee this operation and get everybody moving in the right direction. I walk through the open door quietly as I want to surprise Trina, and surprise her I did. She was totally shocked, as were the 2 buck-naked movers that were quickly wrestling to untangle themselves from Trina. Everybody started apologizing, and I just throw my hands up in the air and jump in my car As I'm tearing out of the driveway, all I can see is Trina in her birthday suit running down the driveway.